When you're given 2 points and you're asked to write the equation of a line that goes through those 2 points, there will be one line and only one line that goes through those 2 points. So when you're asked to write the equation, your first step is to find the slope, and you're going to find the slope using your slope equation, your slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So in this case, you get 8 over 4 or 2. So in this case, your slope is 2. Then you're going to take that slope and you're going to substitute it in for the m in y equals mx plus b. There are many lines that have a slope of 2, but we want to know the specific line that goes through 2, 4, and 6, 12. So we need to figure out what that b is, or the y-intercept, so where this line crosses the y-axis. In order to do that, you have to solve for b. The problem is, in the equation we just wrote, we have 3 unknowns. We don't know y, we don't know x, and we don't know b. The good news is we do know a pair, an ordered pair that has an x and a y, and another ordered pair that has an x and a y. And it doesn't matter which pair you choose. So you can either choose 2 for x and 4 for y, because that's one ordered pair, or you can pick 6 for x and 12 for y, that's the other ordered pair. So I'm going to go with the first one. So where there's a y, I'm going to put 4, because 4 is my y value in the ordered pair 2, 4. And that's going to equal 2 times 2. So the first 2 is my slope, which comes from our slope formula. And then the second 2 is the x value, that's the partner 4. And then I add b. Good news now is I only have one unknown. And the only unknown that I have is b. So I have 4 equals 4 plus b. I subtract 4 from both sides, and I happen to get b equals 0. So the good news for us is, in this case, if I were to substitute in my m and my b, it would be y equals 2x plus 0, which is the same as y equals 2x. If my b happened to be something like 4 or 9, then the 0 would be a 4 or a 9. So I'm going to use the steps from the previous slide, and my first step is to find the slope. So I'm going to do 5 minus 1 and 3 minus 2 for my change in y, which is 4, and my change in x, which is 1, making my slope equal to 4. And then I'm going to take my slope-intercept form, and I'm going to substitute the m with 4, because I now know that my slope of this line is 4. And now my goal is to find the y-intercept, which seems to be the part that people mostly get tripped up on. The good news is you have 3 unknowns, but you know an x and a y. In fact, you know 2 x's and 2 y's. So you're going to pick one of the pairs. I will pick 3, 5. And I'm going to remember that the 3 is my x and the 5 is my y. So I'm going to substitute 5 in for y and 3 in for x, in which case I'm going to solve for b. So I get 5 equals 12 plus b. And when I subtract 12 from both sides, I get b equals negative 7, which means my final equation is y equals 4x minus 7. I can check that because I know that in order for this equation to actually be the true equation, that both points are on that line, I can substitute my second point, which is 2, 1, into the equation. So if my equation is y equals 4x minus 7, and that's truly the correct equation, 2, 1 should in fact be a solution to that equation. So if I substitute 1 in for y and 2 in for x, I should get a true statement. And when I do that, I do get a true statement. So I know that y equals 4x minus 7 is in fact the equation of the line, the only line that goes through 3, 5 and 2, 1. So we can also be given information about the line being either parallel or perpendicular, and we can be asked to write the equation of that line that is either parallel or perpendicular. So in this case, in all cases, parallel lines have equal slopes because they're going to be rising and running at the same rate because parallel lines never touch. So if they rise and run at the same rate and they cross the y-axis at different points, they're never going to meet each other. So we're still going to follow the same steps, because in this case we're finding the equation of the line that passes through 3, 4 and is parallel to y equals 2x plus 1. So the first step that we've been following is to find the slope. The good news is the slope of a parallel line is whatever the slope of the line parallel to it is. So in this case, the slope that we're trying to find is going to be 2. So we don't have any math that we have to do. We just have to look at the equation of the line that's parallel to whichever equation we're trying to find, and that's our slope. So we substitute it in for m, and we only have 1 point to pick from in this case, so that's our default. We substitute 4 in for y because that's our y value in that ordered pair, and 3 in for x, and we solve for b. So we get 4 equals 6 plus b. And when we subtract 6, we get b equals negative 2. So when we substitute the m in for the 2 in for m and the negative 2 in for b, we get the equation of the line that's parallel to y equals 2x plus 1 and goes through the point 3, 4. So we talked about perpendicular lines when we were doing geometry, and we remember that perpendicular lines form right angles. So we're now talking about two lines that form right angles with each other. We'll have negative or opposite reciprocal slopes. What this means is if the slope of one line is 2, then the line perpendicular to this will be the reciprocal, which is 1/2, and then opposite. So since the 2 is positive, its perpendicular line will have a negative slope, a negative reciprocal slope. I like to say opposite because when I say negative, so many of us think that the slope of the perpendicular line has to be negative. However, if the slope of the original line is -3, then the line perpendicular to it will be the opposite, which would be positive, and the reciprocal of 3, which is 1/3. So the perpendicular line slope is 1/3. So now your goal is to write the equation of the line that's perpendicular to y equals 2/3 x plus 4 and goes through the point 6, 8. So when we're doing this, our first task, which has been our first task in the last 3 problems we've done too, is to identify the slope. Good news is we look at the slope of the perpendicular line and we find the opposite, so we know if the original 2/3 is positive, the new slope is going to be negative, and it's going to be the reciprocal. So the negative reciprocal or the opposite reciprocal is -3/2. That's the slope. We now take the original y equals mx plus b and substitute the slope for m. We take the only point we have and we substitute the y value of 8 for y, and we substitute the x value of 6 for x, and we solve for b. So we get 8 equals -9 plus b. We add 9 to both sides, and we get our b equals 17. So our equation would be y equals -3/2 x plus 17.